Greetings! It's I, Countess Naravan Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. I hope you're all having a wonderful day out there. You're joining me for, well, talking about some more tabletop things. Let's talk about what we're doing today. We're diving into another Magic the Gathering plane, and I'm going to introduce you to the lore about it, the general information about it, dive into some locations, the people there, all that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's kind of if you really love lore, or maybe you want to use it in role-playing sessions like D&D or something. That's really what it is. But today we're diving into Kamigawa. So before we get started, though, I want to give a shout-out to everybody joining me on YouTube. Hey, you YouTube folks there. Remember to like the video, ring the bell, subscribe, and, of course, hey, what do you think about Kamigawa? And that goes the same to my Twitch folks who are over here and Morning Worm. You get to be a Twitch folk today. But let's dive into Kamigawa. You know, let's start talking about it. That's the big thing here. So I'm giving the shout-outs. And let's start with the basics of Kamigawa. Now, I will get into this little fellow here we've got introduced here in a minute. Good old Okagachi. But Kamigawa is a plane that has been in 4 Magic the Gathering sets. It was in Champions of Kamigawa, Betrayers of Kamigawa, Savers of Kamigawa, the original Kamigawa block. Historically, that wasn't a very popular block. So the thoughts of returning to Kamigawa were actually really low until we get to the latest one, Neon Dynasty. Neon Dynasty has opened it up that there is a pretty good chance we will see Kamigawa again. Turns out, yeah, there's no issues that guarantee it. It's been fixed a lot, you know. We'll talk about the history, the timeline, all that stuff, but there's been stuff around it. The plane is a globe with multiple continents, though the continent that we're going to be talking about is the one that has been featured. Very similar to when I talked about Ixalan. Ixalan, yes, there's more continents. We can kind of talk about the other continents. Ixalan, the main continent, is the one for it. It is a fun snaky dirg. So, Kamigawa, in its current thing, is merging Kakuryo with Utsushio and recovering from the Phyrexian invasion. That's where we're going to end up today. Alright? Cool. We have the Phyrexian invasion, and technically the 2 versions of the plane, the Spirit Realm and the regular realm, are merging together. Now we should really talk about history. Well, I guess I should talk about that too. The Kakuryo, or Reikikai, is the spirit world where kami dwell. These spirits, minor gods, spirits of the world. And the other half is the Utsushio, where mortals live. And they form a sphere that makes the whole world. And these 2 planes of existence that are on top of each other interplay with each other. And they are merging together on Kamigawa. These 2 versions of reality are slowly becoming merged, and more when we get to Neon Dynasty. The actions that have led to it basically have, happened. So, okay, now we have to go back deep into time, and this deep into the Magic timeline, because the original Kamigawa set, even though it came out after Mirrodin, it's actually set way before then, back in, Ice Age, pre-Ice Age, time immemorial. That's the important thing we have to think about it. And before the original Kamigawa set, we had before the Kami War. Because Kami War is going to be the big thing that's going to happen. That's the Kamigawa sets. The original 3. So, in the millennia before then, the genesis of Kamigawa gave no thought to the place called the Spirit World. They believed the Kami lived in the material world, and the only world that mortals knew. The Kami that existed invisibly and imperceptibility. You couldn't see them, you couldn't understand them, but blessed the simple people with their devout lives. Once in a while, a great Kami would make itself visible to the mortals, and the result would a glowing light deep within a forest of bamboo, a disembodied shadow in the ground at dusk. These were manifestations. The truth, unfortunately, was more complex. The veil between the material and spirit realms was very complex and variable. Each world could influence each other, Kami grew more powerful based on the number of mortals that worshipped him, and mortals would draw power from the Kami through arcane means and through strong faith. So they did interact with each other. They could draw, it's like Kamis were empowered by worship, but mortals were empowered by the Kami then that they could draw power from. In Kamigawa, every person, idea, object had a Kami, and the veil between worlds was no exception. The veil was perhaps the greatest Kami of all, because without it there was no difference between flesh and spirits, between mortal and gods. And the Kami that was the veil between worlds is our big old Dagran friend here, Okagachi. Yeah. It is the Kami that was the veil between worlds, the mightiest of all Kami. So, yeah. It's also like the soul of the world, the first Kami, the Kami of all Kami, the ultimate guardian of the realms, the guardian of Veil. It was a dragon spirit Kami, and it's technically dead. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Because dead is a hard thing for this entire thing. So now we understand the two worlds. Let's get into this map of Kamigawa, which we actually have from during the Kamigawa War. There's a really nice little piece of art that was made with this map of the continent of Kamigawa. So around 3200 AR, there was the ringing of the apocalypse chime in Orgotha. This weakened the veil between the material realm and the spirit realm. It enabled the daimyo Konda and his Moonfolk accomplices to use powerful magic to pull an aspect of Okagachi through the veil and beginning the Kami War. It's as simple as that, We're talking about the universe, Orgotha and the Apocalypse Chime. I don't know if I've really talked much about that. Orgotha is a plane that's really hard to talk about because we've really only seen it in Homeland set, which was very popular, and then in a couple of places for like Commander, and I think in the Phyrexian War stuff, they had a Invasion of Orgotha card. That was the last time we saw it. With Baron Sengir. Hence the Sengir names. Anyway, side note there. Lords Konda's actions enraged the spirits. They came on the physical world with vengeance. They wanted to reclaim the part which was referred to as that which was taken. And that which was taken is a fragment of Okagachi. We'll talk about that which was taken a little bit more in the future because it's important. But most mortals knew nothing that Konda had committed these crimes. No one really knew why their gods turned against them. There was fear, confusion. Humanity did fight back. But Kami had endless numbers. And if you defeated a Kami in physical world, it doesn't mean it couldn't return in a future conflict. It was a losing battle for mortals. And each spirit that manifested in the material world veiled the fray more. This resulted in the change between the worlds, the dynamic of these worlds. New arcane energies to mortals began to be accessed by them. Spirits took shapes that seemed to ignore the difference between life and death. Shinin, spirit fire, had become a hallmark of danger during the early years of the Kami War. It heralded the arrival of the spirit in the material world. These flares then became ectoplasmic energy that just flared up. This energy used to be harmless like foxfire, but then it grew in size, intensity, and began to resemble raw mana, the power of magic itself that flows through the Magic the Gathering universe. It could blind eyes, burn flesh, taint minds. The war ended in its 20th year when Princess Michiko Konda, with the aid of a black magician, Toshiro Umezawa, and their allies, managed to free the kidnapped scion, which took the name Kyodai, and defeated Okagachi and Lord Konda. The death of Okagachi, caused the barrier between the two realms to break down, and so the two began to merge. Basically, unfortunately, they had to kill her father and the Great Spirit, and, with the help of that which is taken, which is now Kyodai, had to change things. Now we kind of reach into time in between. And we'll use the Grim Betrayal here because it comes up during this part of the story, but this reaches the Shattered States era. So this is after the Kamigawa block, but before Neon Dynasty. We have a couple of eras in here that we do have to talk about, because it's the history of in between as we evolve from those Kamigawa blocks, which were around the time of Homelands, historically, and back during things like the Ice Age and stuff, and not during the modern era. We got to get towards that modern Magic the Gathering era. Michiko Kondo reigned prosperously. Her descendants worked tirelessly with Kyodai to maintain her legacy and uphold order and justice in Kamigawa. Generations passed, and noble pursuits gave way to dynastic infighting. Eventually, an emperor died young without an heir and had a crisis of succession. Some believed it should be her brother, and others her husband. With no guidance, Iajo descended into an all-out war and spread across the kingdom, with local lords the opportunity to seize power, fed by our good friend here, Myojin of the Grim Betrayal. Many died, noble peasants alike. The Yamazaki clan had served the Kondo military for decades and earned a reputation for their unshakable sense of duty to the citizens. A young member of that clan felt that the two warring successors were betraying and endangering the Kamigawa people. Inspired by his own ancestor story of challenging a deadly imperial decree, he took it upon himself to enter the contest for the throne. He successfully assassinated the late emperor's husband, but he went for the brother. He found the target armed and ready for battle in the throne room. Upon seeing the confrontation in her chambers, Kyodai had enough. She stripped the Kondo family of their hereditary duty as rulers. From then on, they would be ordinary citizens, and the emperor would never again be chosen by blood. Now the Kami would elect rulers with noble qualities and commitment to the nation. We can now turn to the Dragon Kami, who had previously been some of the Mortal Realm's strongest protectors. Most were lost during the Kami War, and malevolent forces began to wreak havoc. Oni attacks. Oni, I will talk about them more. They're basically corrupted, evil Kami. They swept across the land, culminating in devastation known as Night of the Withering that threatened the entire plane. To fight back, the Orochi enacted a powerful ritual to resurrect Jugen, their original protector. The ritual was successful, and they brought together Jugen and Ryusei, defeated the Oni recursion. Ryusei was like the remaining dragon of the Kami dragon, and Jugen was another one of them. Just keep that in mind. There are two of the Kami dragons. They resurrected one to help to fight the Oni. So, now we reach the era of Enlightenment, where the guidance and wisdom of Kyodai, the Imperials ushered in an age of peace and prosperity. Arts flourished. Performers lined the streets. Strides were made to improve relations with Kami so more could live more harmonious with them in a world of magic. Minamo Academy was rebuilt with the promise of transparency to conduct research that would improve lives. New laws were written to ensure fair treatment of every citizen, mortal or spirit, renewing the faith in their leaders. Decades, centuries passed, and the mortals of Kamigawa noticed an increased number of Kami inhabitants sharing their homes. Few of these were friendly, but many more were upset, even dangerous. Having spent their lives in service to the Kami, the monks of the Order of Jukai went to investigate. They discovered strange rifts in the atmosphere that ejected confused Kami into the plane. The mortals and spirit realm had begun to overlap, and would eventually merge into a single unified realm. So this is the first time that we see, again, this merger was caused by the apocalypse chime, but we're finally getting to the point in time that this merger is becoming something noticeable. They brought this discovery to Iajo and Otawara, and the collaboration of the Imperials and Minamo began to develop what would be known as merge gates. So, and just to note, merge gates are artifacts in modern-day Kamigawa that allow the Kami to safely travel from the spirit world to the mortal world. So it kind of helps with that facilitation of travel a little bit there. The Minamo scholars used their knowledge to invent the gate mechanisms. Imperials used their infantry to erect them, but it was the Jukai who would greet the Kami and welcome them to their new home. Through the combined efforts, Mortal built gates around every new rift, ensuring Kami could safely become part of a new unified Kamigawa. So it's sort of like things, they noticed the merger. They knew it's happening. And though this is an age of enlightenment. Alright, now we turn to the Futurists. And now this is someone from Neon Dynasty, but this is the Saiba Futurists, who are very important to this entire thing. When we get into the more modern age. So, for a lot of Kamigawa's history, power was in the hands of the elite, the Imperials who ran the plane with Kyodai's blessing, various warlords, or those who could channel the power of the Kami. More recently, Kamigawa found itself facing a significant disruption in the status quo with new inventions that made access to power more widely and cheaply available. There was two key inventions. One was enhancers invented by the Akki artisans of Sozenkashi, and the method invented by the Saiba Futurists of drawing direct power from the spirit realm. The Akki artisans had a long tradition of invention and ingenuity, as well as effective use of scarce resources to great effect, including Kami-granted powers. With their enhancers, even though few people had deep relations with the Kamis, as some Imperials or the Order of Jukai, they were able to more efficiently, with whatever powers they were granted, use them. And then, at the same time, we have the Futurists, like this one here, conducting experiments with mergers to test the nature of the spirit realm. With the unintended side effect, they discovered a way to draw on magic directly, without needing to form a bond with Kami. Through the Sokenzashi artisans and the Futurists weren't directly working. And so the Sozenkashi, the Futurists, and the Artisans weren't working directly together. These two technologies soon combined to form the basics of a new boom in technology that exploded across the plane. There were detractors to this modernization, though. The Imperials have been trying to control the flow of new technology and attempting to maintain the stability that they see pulled out from under their feet. This new technology was giving rise to a new group called the Order of Jukai. Named after the same Order of Jukai, who believe the unrestricted use of technology is drawing on the power is reckless. Dangerous mana threatens irreparable damage to the fabric of the two realms. Among the Kami, opinions are mixed. Some Kami are resistant. Others are more eager to see how things will change. This has also seen the appearance of new Kami aligned with technology as a sign the soul of Kamigawa itself has irrevocably been altered in the changing landscape of technological and social upheaval. Hey, we get technology. Cool. Now, we hit Neon Dynasty. Boom. Remember that old map? We got a new one. It looks pretty cool. The Neon Dynasty world map. So this is over a millennia, 1,200 years after the Kamigawa block. We got the realms merging, and one day they're going to be one. There are people that wonder what's beyond the merge gates, or how the denizens of both worlds will be affected when the merge completes. The Imperials are still the main power in Kamigawa. They've discovered electricity, experienced an industrial revolution, and entered a computerized era. The Utsu Shiyo have transformed into a futuristic world of cyberpunk ninjas, samurai, where tradition and modernity meet. The Kami feel threatened by the growth of the modern city of Tawashi. Many have fled to the remains of the Jukai forest and are hostile to humans. Yaganjo trained many Kami diplomats to keep the peace between mortals and spirit realms for this reason. Some have adapted to electricity, taking on industrial-sized bodies. Here we get Tezzeret showing up. This is we're reaching in finally the main Magic the Gathering storyline. We're not talking just about Kamigawa now. Tezzeret shows up to get information on the Planeswalker Spark in the Spirit Realm. So he goes to Kamigawa, sent by the new Phyrexian Praetors. He clashed with the Emperor, destabilized their sparks with a prototype reality chip before escaping. Years later, Jin Gataxius travels to the plane himself to continue research, unlocking the secret of completing a Planeswalker before implementing it on his first subject, Tamiyo. The Emperor is briefly able to stabilize their spark, reconnect with Kyodai, and ends the Asari Uprisers rebellion before naming Lightpaws her regent and departing again. Okay, I've summarized in just those few sentences the entire of the Neon Dynasty storyline. There's a lot more to it. I would recommend there are stories, the various stories of the Neon Dynasty block. You can check it out on the Magic's website if you want to go into depths about this. But this is the summary of it all. We've got Kyodai's around, that which was taken is still there, who is a fraction of Okagachi, remember. So, an important thing to notice is that Kyodai, which is a dragon spirit, is the spirit of the world. And let me show off Kyodai here. This is what Kyodai looks now. This interesting... That's the thing about Kamis. They're really interesting looking. And Kyodai is the world's soul in place of Okagachi. So Kyodai is an incredibly powerful being that happens to be what remains of the original world soul. And connects with beings like the Emperor. Okay. Good old Kyodai. Let's talk the Phyrexian invasion. That's where we're ending our information of this. Because we are in a place with Kamigawa that certainly more storylines could pop up with very easily. So the Phyrexians began the invasion at Towashi. They were invading the multiverse because Kamigawa developed very rapidly. The thing is, their technological adaptation had been going along. Jin-Gataxi's intelligence on the plane was outdated when the invasion began. This was powerful for them. But the slow uptake of samurai meant that the front lines, were first completed. More technologically enhanced, inclined ninjas were better suited as defenders. Was citizenly familiar to the ideas of interplanar assault. That's another thing, too. Remember, 1,000 years ago, there was interplanar assault because the two sides of the plane itself, one attacked the other. There was no skepticism. They understood, this is another plane invading us now. The Kami were incompletable, so they were just slaughtered. They're just mists in the residual. Bojutsu District was the invasion's force's prime target, with Sheiju itself corrupted by the completed planeswalker Tamio. The tree burst apart, glistening oil ran down between splinters. The lower tree branches, usually inhabited by Kami, were split apart. Tamio then faced by Kaido and her adopted son Nashi. She tried to recruit the two of them to ranks of Phyrexian. Tamio engaged Kaito in battle, and at last moment, the Wanderer, the Emperor of Kamigawa, appeared and killed Tamio. Her spirit memory, a spiritual memory of what she once was, manifested to comfort her son, and took residence in their home. So basically, with her own nature and connections to Kami and stuff like that, she was able to transcend her body and mind spiritually that had been corrupted by New Phyrexia. So a portion of Tamio still exists, though she's dead. The Wanderer realized that Tamio had chosen death. She basically forced herself in a way. She had half-heartedly aimed her attacks and had silently beseeched the Wanderer to look after Nashi in her stead. Kyodai was distracted from her duties of guarding the barrier between realms. So now, remember, the realms are still merging. Oni are a dangerous part from the spirit realm. They've attacked before. But Oni were under control. If they show up at a controlled pace, you could control them, you could defeat them, you could deal with the problem. They just want to escape and wreak havoc. But with the barrier not watched, because Kyodai was distracted with in another invasion from another realm, Oni are out in the mortal realm again. So in the aftermath of the invasion, the Wanderer was one of the many planeswalkers that lost her spark in the Great Pruning. As far as we know, Kaito still has his spark. It hasn't said otherwise. So now she has been relegated to Kamigawa, but she's made an interesting choice. She's chosen to travel the entire plane while Lightpaws continues as regent in her stead for a time being. Now she is still on Kamigawa. She is still now reconnected more closely with Kyodai, and probably could be called upon if needed very easily. but she wants to. She had wandered the plains kind of aimlessly as this wanderer who has a kind of broken spark. Now, with the control of her wanderings, she wants to see her world. She wants a chance to actually experience a world. So she's traveling. Let's talk about places in Kamigawa. Now, this is a Neon Dynasty Plains picture. I couldn't find a good picture of Towabara. So we'll talk about... There's 5 regions of Kamigawa. They match the 5 colors. Prime geographical regions. Each was originally guarded by a dragon spirit, loyal to the material inhabitants of its location. Yes, most of the dragon spirits are kind of gone now. As I said, we still do have Jugen and Ryusei, technically. When he was reincarnated, he became Kura, as a female now. Jugen was male and was reincarnated as a female Kura, which is interesting enough, in the Neon Dynasty. Kura, the reincarnation of Juga. And of course, Ryusei's also reincarnated as Asushi, who's also female. That's an interesting thing about them. I guess it matches with the kind of change in Emperor, too. Which is an interesting fact. So, Towabara. It's a massive plain, which means eternal field, and it's the center of Kamigawa. There's Araba, the ruined land, a blasted place filled with craters from kami attacks. Yajo Castle was the center of Araba. It was the fortress of the daimyo, Takashi Konda and his samurai, where humans rode gigantic trained moths into combat. The castle was assaulted by Okachi during the Kami War. It was guarded by Yosei, the Morning Star. Still, Iganjo, the city with the castle at the center, is the imperial political center. And it's the shrine of Kyodai's there, the residence of the emperor. Old architecture is incorporated in new designs with a sense of balance between new and old. Pilgrims frequently visit this with an audience with the emperor. Now this is old Minamo, but it's Minamo Academy. It's a school which teaches powerful spirits and human magics. It's built on the largest waterfall in Kamigawa, north of Iganjo. It's led by the Soratami, who guide the headmaster and his faculty. They're often prayed by the staff. They're often prayed to by the staff of the school. Soratami are magic-practicing moonfolk who live in the clouds above the academy. The school was besieged and ravaged by Hidegetsu, the ogre whose pupil was killed by a Minamo student, and it was guarded by Keiga, the Tide Star. It's located north of Jukai Forest. So yeah, we'll talk about Jukai. But it was rebuilt, remember? Go to the swamplands. Takenuma. It's a large area of swampland, west of Iganjo. Bandits, Nezumi, the rat folk, live here. Multitude of Oni, the demon spirits, live in its darkest regions, leaving the place corrupted, void of sunlight. It was the most brutal battles in the Kami War, and Kushu, the evening star, watched over the vile swamps. Again, all these things have been updated Neon Dynasty to a degree. The Sokenzan Mountains, largest in all of Kamigawa, lies south of Iganjo. The Akki, the goblin creatures, live here. Bandits, renegade samurai called Rodin. Godo, a warlord of bandits, lived here. Hidegetsu and Obakeno, an ogre shaman who summons Oni, lived here. There was the Tendo Peaks deep within there, the steepest mountains in Kamigawa. The Heart of Frost, one of the Tendo Peaks, is haunted by Yuki Onna. And of course it was guarded by Ryusei, the Falling Star. Sokenzashi was founded here, which is an industrial city using the lava from the mountains to sustain arts and crafts, and natural springs surround it. It became the center of the Asari uprisers, which were rebels against desiring freedom from imperial tyranny. And we got the Jukai Forest, of course. The thick forest harbors various kinds of kami. It lies east of Iganjo. Here, the Order of Monks that tune and train themselves for the natural world. Kitsune live in Jukai along with the Orochi. Huchisensei in the western fringes. No one has really decided what lies east of Jukai Forest. All exploring attempts have failed. It's watched after Jugin, the rising star. Circa Neon Dynasty, the Order of Jukai was established to preserve nature and reverence for the spirits. They cite visions of spirits' world being shattered, hence taking their own hands to kind of avoid the destruction of technology. There's also the city of Tawashi was established in former territory of Jukai, which caused problems. And it's now the metropolitan center of the plane, Tawashi. Some other locations to mention. Ooh, this one's really cool looking. And this is the Neon Dynasty version of it. This is the Soratami City in the sky. This is Otawara. It's the Soratami City resting in the clouds in the sky of Kamigawa. It's a floating place. It's kept secret from those who dwell on the grounds of Kamigawa. The only non-Soratami ever to set foot in Oboro were human disguised genius Sakashi, the Ronin Kagi mage, Toshiro Umezawa, and the famed Akki wizard Kikijiki. Of course, changed a little bit more in present day. You know, the Nezumi adopted child of Tamio. We move on, though, because, again, you can dive deeper into this one, to this one here. This is a pleasant one. The Shizo, Death's Storehouse. It's a battlefield cursed by the death of 891 samurai in a single confrontation. Only single spirit, Shirei, Shinzo's caretaker, stays there and walks the dead to prevent lower souls from leaving Kamigawa. It's probably less cursed now. Probably. Mikokoro, a sacred island of crystal that sits amid one of Kamigawa's seas, also known as the Eyes of the World and Shining Enlightenment. Hey, here's some art, concept art from Kamigawa, as we talk about a few more topics here. The most common language is Kamigawan. It uses Japanese numerals. Moonfolk write using unique calligraphy. There's also the Hidegetsu ritual language. Kitsune, Orochi are their own languages. Orochi includes hissing sounds, and there's a Nezumi tongue. So there's a number of different languages spoken in Kamigawa, too, which is something that we know about but isn't mentioned much. There's also money there. It operates on Ryo, a circular copper, silver, and gold coins used by most species on the plane, including humans, Kitsune, and Nezumi. Copper coins with a cold cut in the center were used as offering to Kami before the Kami War, representing the circle of life. In the modern era, credit chips are attached to citizens' wrists and are preferred, but gamblers will still carry translucent physical banknotes. Kamigawa used numbered years, though they're not given a name, and their start is unknown. As the year 1053 occurred during the Age of Enlightenment, it's possible years were marked before or marked following the Kami War. Kamigawa months are numbered, and there's at least 10 of them. 8 and 9 months have at least 8, and the 8th and 9th months have at least 29 days. Dates are recorded as a string of 2-digit months followed by 2-digit days, a period, and the year. So the first day of the 8th month of 1053 would be 0801.1053. There's a 24-hour notation. A holiday called the Lantern Festival begins by 0914 and runs to 0918. So there's some information we actually have there, details about the plane. Hey, look at this. It's showed up. Let's talk about who lives there, though. Certainly, humans live there. I'm not going into depths about humans, but, you know, we don't really need to. Also living there are, of course, the Kitsune, the fox-tailed beings. We've got the Soratami, as I said, the Moonfolk. I really should... they're blue-aligned creatures, also known as Soratomic. They're capable of flight and dwell in the Kamigawa's clouds. That's just some basic information about them. I probably should tell you a little bit more about the Kitsune, too. They're fox people, and they are most commonly found in the Imperial Court in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty and stuff like that. Let's continue on, though. Hey, the Nezumi, the rat folk. They are, of course, natives of the swamp I talked about, of Takenuma. Live in the outskirts of a lot of human cities and stuff like that. A lot of them became ninjas, shamans, controlled insects. There's an Akki. There's Kikijiki, who was mentioned, who, was the Mirror Breaker. So, yeah. Good old Kikijiki. They are goblins. They inhabit Kamigawa's mountains. They're obsessed with fire and mischief. They are in an area with ogres, too. They kind of have like a resemblance to Kappa, which is another race that's on the plane here, which are more turtles instead of goblins. We have the Orochi, the snake people, the snake humanoids of Jukai Forest. There's a number of tribes of them. The Kashi tribe, Matsu tribe, Sakura tribe. Their magic is based on reference to Kami and the land itself, and tied to the seasons. And then, to kind of put together the list of everything else, I'm going to show off this here, which is an Oni. This is an Oni. Vessel of the All-Consuming. So yeah. Kami are big things. There's Kami Dragon, the Kirin, the Myojin, Phoenixes, Zubara, Kami in general. But this is an Oni, and probably one of the most powerful and dangerous of all Onis. So keep that in mind. Other things we have are the Obakemono, Kappa, insects, plant hydras. A lot of different types of beings. And we got the Wanderer, the Emperor herself, to finish up of Planeswalkers that we know are native. Kaito Shizuki is probably the only active native Planeswalker to Kamigawa we know about. Just because again, I'm pretty sure in the storyline, because he was there, it would have been confirmed if he had lost his spark, like the Emperor had. We know the Emperor has lost her spark, so he's probably one of the few. Again, a bunch of Planeswalkers lost their spark in the things that happened. The Wanderer here had been with an unusual broken kind of spark. Tamio had existed there. She's dead. And then many Planeswalkers have visited here. And, with the planar barriers kind of changed, we might get other non-Planeswalker visitors to Kamigawa in the future. Though, as of now, Jin Taxius is the only non-Planeswalker to go there. And others have attempted to go there or actually visited it in large amounts that you can kind of look up. But, yeah, we got Planeswalkers there, too. But, yeah, I think that will be it for Kamigawa. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed learning about it. And again, I could go much more into depth about a lot of these locations and places that are there, and I could take, another half an hour to an hour diving even more into depths and places in Kamigawa. But I think this is enough to get you an idea of what's there, and the interest that's in the plane, and the fact that, we can look at these two different eras, and they are vastly different eras in history. It's one of those things is many Magic sets tend to be connected historically close to each other. If we think about Dominaria, and it as a plane, we've looked at historically through many ages that are pretty close to each other, leading into modern Dominaria. A lot of other planes, looking at things like Innistrad, all the sets kind of go together. Ravnica, all the sets kind of go together. This is one of the few examples where there's 1,000 years apart between the sets. We can see how a plane changed and evolved historically rapidly. And yes, it's hard to kind of do in a lot of modern day blocks and stuff like that. We can't do that as much anymore because the stories have been unified a little bit more, and the time periods have been unified in many other planes. Certainly some older ones or other places you could visit these kind of historical moments. And it's not we can't visit these historical moments. We had a revisit to Dominaria during the Brothers' War, that came out more recently. So it doesn't mean we can't revisit past times in a plane. But it really requires important storylines at that point in time, I think, for that, or important times for those planes you should reflect upon. I think we're not going to see many of these kind of vast jumps like this with Kamigawa. When we reach the Neon Dynasty, a neon punk, a sci-fantasy neon punk world, which is fascinating because it's filled with neon lights, cyberpunk aesthetics, magic, all mixed together. It is taking a lot of what I love about something like the Shadowrun RPG and putting it to like an 11 instead of a 10 in a very interesting way, combined with this aesthetic of, futuristic kind of, I wouldn't say ideal, but peaceful Japan, in a way. Because remember, leading into the Neon Dynasty was an age of enlightenment, and it is an age of peace. And yes, technology has caused some friction, and there's still some frictions with, the spirit world and the physical world, mortal world melding, with Kakuryu and Utsoshiyu becoming closer and closer together as time goes on. But it doesn't mean that we don't have interesting stories to tell. Certainly, a story of the merger completing. Maybe the invasion of the Phyrexians, again, caused a speed up of this, because planar makeup has changed yet again. Many events in the multiverse of Magic the Gathering has caused planar magic or makeup to shift. There's a time when people could travel between planes. It ended in the Time Spiral block, when Dominaria, as one of the key planes of the multiverse, caused a change there. Certainly, it's a new change that's happened again in the multiverse. Planar travel's open again. And maybe a storyline of the planes finally finishing merging and we're dealing with the Oni and stuff like that would be an interesting one. I kind of feel like that would be the obvious storyline, but doesn't mean they couldn't come up with a different one. But that would be a great, revisit to Kamigawa. I would certainly love to see Neon Dynasty again, and an interesting storyline, and also dealing maybe with the fact that because planar travel can happen, and they have developed things like remember, Kamigawa developed the merge gates. They understand planar boundaries. If anybody is going to come up with more ways to travel the planes, Kamigawa might. It is possible now through the connections that Phyrexian made. Doesn't mean that has to be the only ones. Maybe they can just access it and control it better, too. There's so many cool ideas that deal with this, it is the ultimate expression of what the magic world is with technology. And I think that's why I enjoy Neon Dynasty the most, because it shows us where technology goes in a magic world. And Kamigawa is so awesome because of that. Anyway, I could gush on for a while about this. I really do enjoy the Kamigawa block and how they evolved it. I understand why it wasn't popular. It had a lot of problems with its original mechanics and some ideas that were very interesting, but not necessarily the best. And that didn't help for the popularity of the original sets. But I always thought it had an interesting lore and mechanics to it. And with them coming in with this Neon Dynasty as a slap across the face that was just awesome and perfectly evolved the plane. It was great. So this was great. This is Wizards storytelling at its best. So I hope you enjoyed the video here. We talked about it. I will be back, and I will talk about more Magic the Gathering planes or other tabletop stuff in the future. You can remember to always check me out live on Twitch, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, as a backup if I miss one of those days. And if you want to see live plays of other stuff, I do have Crimson Queen, Wednesdays, 9 p.m., and Discussing Tabletop, which is a tabletop discussion show, News of the Week and more, Saturdays at 6 p.m. The Pathfinder First Edition for Crimson Queen. I have Discord, Twitter, link below. That's my social media, twitter.com. If you want to check those out. All right. I'm going to get going. I'm going to say to you all, thank you for joining, and we'll talk about more awesome stuff in the future. But until then, I bid you a farewell.